And this is a coach of mine, a mentor of mine told me this probably about 10 years ago, if not longer. But he said, when you get better, everything gets better.
Vaughn's a serial entrepreneur with a real estate passion for real estate investing and helping others.
I started as a technician like most people do, industry-specific business coaching and things such as that until about 5 years into business. For me, I'm just a serial entrepreneur. I'm a hard worker. I'm going to go in and when I commit to something, it's all or nothing, right? I was responsible for probably 85 to 90% of our deals.
So he's built an acquisitions and wholesale business that operates with him and requires very little of his time. So this is something really cool about Vaughn that we're going to dive into. Welcome to the Zeroed In Podcast. I'm your host, John Lallande, a seasoned real estate investment expert and former Marine recon sniper. This podcast is designed for those seeking effective strategies to increase revenue growth through strategic hiring, leadership, and effective tracking. Our focus here is clear and direct. We provide actionable insights from successful founders and growth experts. Whether you're establishing a new business or aiming to scale an existing one, our episodes offer the essential advice you need for practical business growth. Lock and load, zero in, and get ready to scale. Welcome to Zeroed In with John Lallande, where real estate and business experts meet, featuring direct talks with top CEOs, founders, and leaders who have built their success from the ground up. Now, today I'm really excited. We've got Vaughn Bethell. Vaughn's a serial entrepreneur with a real estate passion for real estate investing and helping others. He likes to work with driven, motivated, and intelligent people who think outside the box, inside the box, and right on the edge of the box. So he's built an acquisitions and wholesale business that operates with him and requires very little of his time. So this is something really cool about Vaughn that we're going to dive into. Because of that, he's actually been able to start and build different verticals in the same space, including a rental company, an owner finance company, a lending and loan service company, and a coaching company. So Vaughn's goal and passion is to provide the dream of homeownership through non-traditional financing to those otherwise who might not have the opportunity to actually get into those houses. So he would love to teach and coach others to do the same while he continues to grow his real estate portfolio. So Vaughn, incredible intro, man. Welcome on the podcast and thanks for coming on.
Oh man, I appreciate that. And thanks for having me.
Of course, man. So let's jump in, dude. I want to know, so tell me about I know we talked a little bit about what you do. Tell me about what your team looks like right now, because you've got like 4 or 5 different businesses, right? And you're managing, you're the top guy on all of them. So tell me about what your team looks like.
Yeah, man, it sounds a lot more complex than it is, right? So 5 years ago, a little over 5 years ago, when I got into the business, it was just me. I had 2 partners that I ended up buying out pretty quickly. But I was doing all the grunt work, man. And I was, doing everything, the sales, the marketing, the dispo, everything, going to all the closings, transaction coordination and all that. But I was heads down and trying to just generate cash, right? And then finally I got to the point where I was just grinding, and I was making really good money. But I'm a very purpose-driven person. And, fortunately enough, I had a lot of business experience in the past. So before I even got into real estate, I had ran I ran a fitness business. I was in the fitness industry for 15 years, but I had my own fitness studio that did performance training and personal training for 11 years. And when I opened up the doors to that personal training studio, I had 23 clients. And then when I got out of the fitness training and got out of the fitness space, I had 350 clients and a staff of 14. Right. Wow. So I had grew a successful business and a successful following and a successful community. But what I forgot to do is surround myself with the people that were going to be able to do it without me. And so it kept eating more and more of my time, right? I didn't get the right systems, tools, and processes in place. Now, granted, I didn't find actual business coaching and industry-specific business coaching and things such as that until about 5 years into business. I started as a technician like most people do. But once I finally found those things and started implementing those things, I look up and I have a team of just young, entitled people that want everything and don't want to do anything, right?
Yeah, that's so good. I have a quick question on that. When you started out with partners, so most people that are looking to jump into a new business venture, that's the first thing that they do. I've done the same thing, right? So why did you partner? And then how did you know, okay, it's time to go out on my own?
Yeah. So when I partnered, I was actually, in between trying to figure out what I wanted to do and really who I was. Cause coming from 15 years in the fitness space, I was known as the sports performance coach, the soccer coach, the personal trainer. And I was known as that guy for 15 years in our community. And I created a lot of relationships and built a reputation for myself. But I look up at the end of the day and, people like to work out in the times that you need to be spending with your family and taking time for yourself. Right. So before work, after work, at lunchtime, and on the weekends. And, that was just not good for family life. So I had to make a decision. I had to make a pivot. So when I got into the real estate investment space, I was actually doing sales as a high-end for a high-end remodeling company. And I was surrounded by it, but we were doing in-home sales, right? Like that one-stop close, right? And I had a friend that was starting to do some flips. I was living vicariously through her. She had over 20 years built a pretty decent sized rental portfolio while she had, she was running a jewelry store in the background. And she was trying to get away from the jewelry business. I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do. I was going with her on some of her flips, just kind of, trying to learn. And then finally we were just like, hey, why don't we partner together and start doing stuff together? Well, we didn't have a lot of capital or a lot of backing. So we had to figure out how to create, something from nothing. And that's how we found wholesaling. So, for me, I'm just a serial entrepreneur. I'm a hard worker. I'm gonna go in and when I commit to something, it's all or nothing. Right. So I was just head first, became a student, YouTube University. This is all I can think about. Well, the partnership lasted for about a year, but looking up going into the end of that year, I was responsible for probably 85 to 90% of our deals, but I was splitting everything three ways because we had a third partner too. At the end of the day, you look up and you're like, hey, it's just not weighted evenly, at least in my eyes. So, this is something that I either have to go out and do on my own. They can buy me out, whatever the situation may be. And being that we were good friends and we never wanted business to come through between friendship, we quickly came to a solution and an agreement. And I bought them out within a matter of a month. So.
Wow. Okay. And when you did, so you started again, did you guys have any employees that you brought over, or did you start and it was just Vaughn by himself and then you built the business from there?
You know what? We had one, I guess you can call employee, is more of a 1099 contractor, but he was my driving for dollars guy. Right. Okay. And he's been with me for 5 years. He still is my driving for dollars guy. He's awesome. But yeah, I realized that I'm wired different. Not many people think the way I do. So to have somebody that's, on board with me and that I can partner with and truly have the same work ethic and the vision that I do is very hard to find. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And so what does your team look like? And you talked about your fitness business. What does your team look like now in your real estate business?
Well, that kind of comes back to, and I tell you, kind of reverse engineer that. After I bought my partners out, I went for about a year by myself. I had maybe half the year I had an executive assistant. I tried to sit back and realize all right, I'm making good money. Things are going well. I'm grinding, but how am I going to get people to join my team and be excited to wake up every morning and go to work? Right. Yep. And they're not going to be like, yay, I get to go make Vaughn some money.
Yeah.
So I had to get really clear on my purpose, cause, and passion and what I wanted to build this company around. And once I did that at the end of 2020 and started, casting that vision to other people, I was able to get people on board and bought into my passion, right? My purpose and our vision. And since I was able to do that over the last 4 years, we now have over 20 people on our team. I have a COO that runs all of our companies, lets me to be the true visionary. I have an operations manager. I have a sales manager. I have multiple acquisition specialists. I have multiple disposition specialists that focus on, cash buyers as well as owner finance buyers. I have a loan servicing and underwriting company. So I have a operations manager over there that's also an RMLO. So we can underwrite loans, we can service loans, and most of those are your non-traditional, right? But yeah, we got a property manager. I got project managers for when we're renovating the properties that we're holding as rentals or owner financing. So the team has grown significantly in the last 4 years. And people sit back and look like, hey, that's a lot of exponential growth in a short period of time. But I had to get really, really clear on what I wanted to do and what the purpose and passion of the company was in order to bring on the right people and get them all aligned in the same direction.
So a lot of people struggle with that first hire, right? You said it was just you. You had somebody that you're paying 1099 to go driving for dollars. And what most people think is, why is somebody going to come work for me, right? It's just me. So you said the purpose, cause, and passion is what got people on board. So how do you get people? What do you tell them? What conversations are you having? Because, like when you have a big company like you do now, where you've got 10 to 20 employees, you can say, hey, this person is making this much money in this position. And if you do the same thing, you can make that. But at the beginning, you don't have that. It's just you, right? And so how did you tell those people to get to work for you?
So you really got to cast the vision. And that's why it's important to get dialed in on what that purpose is, right? So you got to cast the vision. You got to show them, hey, here's where we are. I can't pay you a ton, but I can, basically partner with you by paying you a percentage of what you bring in and how you're helping me and the value you're bringing to me in this particular role. But here's where we're going. And when they can see that vision and see what they have the potential to make in 6, 12, 18 months, that's when you start to get people bought in. And, a lot of people don't look at it this way, but when I'm coaching people or I'm working with business owners, whether it's in the real estate space or any other space, the first hire I always tell them to make is an executive assistant. And that person can be it can be virtual or it can be in person. But you got to free up your time, take the things off your plate that you don't like to do, and free up your time to go put that purpose, cause, and passion in place and start to cast the vision.
So an EA first, that would be the first hire no matter what. So, and they're doing what for you exactly? Like, let's say you're starting out, you've got a business, usually when you're starting a business, you're probably in the sales role at some point, right? Like probably doing sales. So what are they doing for you in your free time, like in their time?
Yeah. So for everybody, it's different, right? So like when people are trying to figure out what that first hire is, like, use a VA. And a lot of times I tell them virtual because it's very affordable. You can hire them for part-time, 10, 20 hours a week to start. But, make a list of all the things that you do in a day and then start piecing off the ones that you don't like to do, which is probably 80% of the list, right? And then start figuring out how to delegate those things and hand it off, because one, it's going to energize you. Right? When you don't have to focus on the tedious maniacal tasks on a daily basis, you can hand that off, but it allows you to focus on the things that you love to do, whether that's, the sales piece, the acquisitions, the dispositions, or even just going out and, mapping out the vision of the company. So it's going to be different for everybody. Me, I'm a, glorified sales and marketing guy, right? That's my background. But for other people, it might be operational and they want to, have somebody do the setting up the appointments or, doing the cold calling or whatever it may be, the things that they're doing currently that they don't like to do.
How long did you sit so you're obviously a sales guy, right? By nature, you can kind of just tell by your personality. How long did you sit in that sales role before you brought on your last hire? When did you say, okay, I'm ready for an acquisitions manager or salesperson to come on board?
Yeah. So I hired our first acquisition specialist back in 2021. Actually 2020, sorry, at the end of 2020. I brought in a full-time acquisition specialist or acquisitions manager that started full-time in January 2021. Right. Okay. And I spent the first 90 days, so the first quarter of 2021, training that person up. So a lot of people hire and then they forget to train them on what it is that they expect or what they want them to do. Right. Yeah. They're like, hey, I'm going to bring you on for acquisitions or I'm going to bring you on for dispositions. Here you go. And then they expect them to just know what to do and then make it happen. And then almost 100% of failures, well, I would say a big bulk of that, maybe not 100%, but a lot of failures from a hiring standpoint become because they didn't relay exactly what it is they wanted in that position or what success looked like in that position. So acquisitions, it was one of the first things that I hired out. But I had to make sure that I really, really trained that person up, right?
Was that the first thing after your executive assistant? Did you hire
after your executive assistant? Yep.
How did you know that you were ready? How did you know that it was time to hire that first acquisitions specialist?
Because I knew I didn't want to be doing this all day long for the rest of my life, right?
Okay.
So if I could figure out...
Do you know at what point that actually came to where you said, okay, I'm going to scale this into a business and this is how I'm going to do this?
My journey is a little bit unique. in the standpoint of I had 15 years of business experience before I got into this. So I knew coming in that that's something that I didn't want to do by myself long term. I had to scale it. And I had plans to scale from when I first started it, right? And that's unique. That's where a lot of people are lacking or don't know how to do it. And I fortunately enough had the experience to do it. So I can't really speak on that standpoint for people that don't have that experience. Yeah. But I also knew that I didn't want to do this and be the one that it was relying upon for the rest of my life. Because, if it's relying on you, your income is relying on you.
Yep, 100%. And so you hired a team of acquisitions. Now, what I'm really curious about is you have a sales manager now, right? Somebody that runs your acquisitions team.
Absolutely.
So did you promote from, he started as a specialist, worked his way up into sales manager, or did you pull somebody from the outside?
So that's a unique story because I pulled him from the outside, right? So my current sales manager, he's actually my neighbor. He lives 2 doors down from me. We're good friends. But he was a sales manager for LGI Homes, right? And he was growing the neighborhood in one of our local markets for them, right? A new construction neighborhood. So he was one of the ones sitting in the model home. People would come in and they would sell the new construction homes. But he was in sales with a mattress company, with mattress firm for 20 years before that. So he had extensive sales knowledge and experience, but it was more of in the manager standpoint, right? And I had acquisition specialists, I had disposition specialists, but I needed somebody to come in and hold them accountable outside of just myself, right? To making sure that they're hitting their targets, they're hitting their goals, but also to continue training them, to continue sharpening the axe, right? And build the culture. And so I actually created that position. And not a lot of people have that, right? Their sales manager or acquisitions manager is their salesperson, right? Yeah. And their manager. So they might have a couple people underneath them, but they're also on the phones doing the sales too, or going out to the appointments as well. Mine doesn't do appointments, doesn't do sales calls. He just holds the sales team, acquisitions and dispositions, accountable to reaching their targets, hitting their goals, and continuing education.
How did he transition? Did you put him through a period where he was going on appointments and closing deals and then had him learn the craft first? Or did you just say, hey, you know how to do this, just go in and make our performance improve?
Yeah. So when you hire somebody that has experience and is an expert or subject matter expert in their field, right, with his being sales, 80% of the sales is the same. The other 20% is subject matter. Yeah. So I had him jump in right off the bat and just start looking at areas where we could start perfecting or fine tuning the process. Right. He didn't know the subject matter. Like in reality, selling new construction homes is totally different than, getting a seller or a property owner to sell us their distress home. Yep. But the 80% is the same. Now, for the last year and a half, he's been sharpening the axe on the subject matter. But the concepts of holding people accountable, hitting targets, hitting goals, and creating the culture, right, is the same. And it's the same thing for business. In any business, 80% is the same. Systems, tools, processes, and people. And then the 20% is subject matter.
So what does his daily activities look like for you right now as a sales manager? How many reps does he have, and what does his activity look like?
Yeah. So right now we have 2 acquisitions reps and 2 dispositions reps under him. Okay. So starting off in the morning, the first thing that we do every morning at 9:15 is we do our sales huddle. Right. So we just go over the numbers from yesterday and the numbers from the where we are week to date compared to the previous week. Right. Okay. And then we look at any unique situations on the acquisition side, look at unique situations on the disposition side that the reps may need help with. And then he also does our LOIs or our analyzer. So we do everything over the phone. We don't go out to in-person appointments anymore. So we have a 3-step sales process. Our acquisitions people are not allowed to make an offer on the first call. It's all about building rapport, establishing a relationship, getting the seller to know, like, and trust us, and then understand how we do business, right? And then asking them to set their next appointment to when we can deliver the offer. So it's separating ourselves and our culture and who we are from everybody else. Right. And then from there, he's putting together the offers for them, or at least giving them the range to deliver on the next call. And then his job is to see it through from contract to close. Right. So we have a transaction coordinator or an attorney, whose paralegals do a lot of the legal side. But his job, right? His one magic number or Moneyball number is closings and revenue. So whatever it takes to get it from contract to close, getting on the phone with a seller or, getting a tenant out or communicating with the seller to help evict the tenant or whatever that needs to happen. Right. And in distress sales, a lot of stuff can happen, but ultimately is extreme ownership of doing whatever it takes to get it from, contract to close. Right.
It's so interesting that you bring that up because I was on a coaching call with one of my mentors earlier in the week, and I'm primarily in a sales manager position right now. I've got 3 acquisitions managers and 2 dispositions managers, and I was telling him most of your time, and especially when you're in this part of your business, most of your time is spent just making sure that the train doesn't fall off the tracks, right? It's just
exactly.
There are contracts coming in, your acquisition team locks them up, and your dispo team is selling them. But there's a lot that goes on in between those two things, right? You've got tenants that don't want to leave, right? Or they're not paying. You've got squatters. You've got other investors showing up to the property, talking to the seller saying, hey, I can give you a better offer. Just cancel with those guys. You've got all of those things in between, and the most important number at the end of the day is what we make. You can lock up all the contracts you want and have all the hard contracts. The dispo team could sell them, but if those deals don't close, your business doesn't have revenue. So I love
100%.
And I've never heard anyone say that before. So I love that you said his entire focus is just deals closed and revenue, right? That's it. I don't care. The contracts that come in is great. The contracts that get sold is great. But how many are closing at the end of the day?
Yeah, and it's as simple as that Moneyball number, right? Like, is that one number to focus on in every area or every position of your company? Like, he knows, like, your Moneyball is $140,000 a month.
Yep.
Right. I don't care how you get there, but that's what has to happen. That's the goal. That's the target that you have to hit, and that's not a goal. That's a target. Right. If you aren't hitting that target every month, you're not doing your job. Right. Yep. We could set a goal for $200,000 a month, but the target number is 140.
Yeah.
Right. And that's when, as long as we're hitting 140 every month, I don't have to come in and double check on what's going on. Right.
Like that.
So it's just giving people extreme ownership or them taking extreme ownership of their position. But yeah, a lot of his time is spent putting out fires. Right. Put out fires, but you got to get to closing. Right?
I like it. And how did you see performance change when you brought in this outside guy who doesn't have any experience in the whole, like, what did the performance change look like from before he was there till after?
Well, it's clear expectations, right? So when you give people clear expectations, and I'm not always the best, right? I think differently. So sometimes it's hard for me to communicate what I want. Right. I'll tell people this is what I want, but it doesn't come out the way I think it does. Or the things that don't stick that I think should stick. But once you just get clear and get that feedback on what it is that they expect. Right. So what do you think you should be doing as far as like what I told you and, repeat it back to me? Once you have clear expectations, then now it's accountability, right? You can hold others accountable, but you also can be accountable yourself, right? You can create goals and we all moving towards the same common purpose.
Yeah.
So that's the biggest thing I see is like when everybody has clear expectations and they're focused on just that one or two things. Yeah, everything else, like amount of outgoing calls and outgoing texts and all that stuff leads to that one number. But at the end of the day, this one number is the one that matters. Mm-hmm. Right? So
one of the things that I love that you just said is that you have your team repeat, hey, what did you hear me say? Repeat back to me what you heard me say. Because a lot of times as entrepreneurs, especially, you're a type A personality, you just start saying things, right? And sometimes, depending on who you are, like I know for me, I'll tell them 10 different things, right? Hey, we're going to do all like this. This is your sales call. This is everything you could have done better. You got that? And they, they give you the head nod. Yep, I got that. And then you go, okay, cool, go do it. And then, but stopping and saying, hey, what did you hear me say? Right? What did you hear me say that we just went over? They tell you that. And then you get the commitment. Hey, can you commit to doing this better, 10% better? Let's say Right now, you're talking 80% of the time, they're talking 20. Can you commit to
Yep.
doing 70% and they're talking 30, right? Can you commit to that? Getting that commitment. And then from there, having the clear expectation. So one of the things that I've seen in really good leaders is they always take ownership on that, just like you did, right? Is I get that commitment level back and I make sure that they have those clear expectations. So that's
Yeah,
incredible.
and a big
Go ahead.
thing, and I'm still working on it, right? I'm not the best at it, but I'm getting better because I'm aware. But it's telling them what success looks like, right? So, what does success look like in this position, or what does success look like in this project, or this rock that we create, right? So, if we have rocks for the first quarter, okay, here's our rocks. But you might have an idea in your mind of what success looks like. But if you don't clearly communicate that to them, they're going to come back and they're like, hey, I did it. And you're like, that's not what I was envisioning. Right. So
100%.
start with the end in mind and then let them reverse engineer it. Right. And then create checkpoints along the way. But here's a project. Here's what it looks like when it's successful and complete. I'm gonna let you figure out the middle piece, right? And that's where, you talk about me having a team in multiple companies. Being a true CEO, we've all heard of the 80-20 rule, right?
Yep.
However, we want to break that down a little bit more. And we got 10, 80, 10, right? As a CEO, I want to come in at the first 10%, which is the ideation and creation, right? And I want to come back in at that last 10%, which is the implementation and integration. I'm going to hand it off the middle to you guys and let you figure out how it's going to get done, right? And I got to have 100% trust in my team that they can figure out the how.
I like that. So you come up with the idea, you let them come up with all the pieces, and then you're coming in at the very end just to help with the implementation, kind of giving a sign off on it. That looks good. And that's how you're able to manage all of your other companies, right?
Yeah. And then being the fact that I do have more subject matter expertise than they do, because I don't go out and hire people that have the same, that are in my industry and do what I do, right? Because usually I've done that in the past and they have bad habits, right? That I have to retrain, and it's hard to correct bad habits, right? That you already have. But if I bring somebody on board that doesn't have those habits and I can train them and educate them on my industry and how I want things done, I do have to give them a little bit of like direction in that 80%, as far as like, here's some resources you might want to look at and, da, 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 da. But for the most part, 10% ideation creation, the last 10% is integration and implementation.
And now you're at a point where, a lot of people struggle to get to this point. You have did you say a CEO or a COO?
COO.
You have a COO. Okay. So explain what a COO is doing for you. And then I'm going to ask, I would love to know how you kind of jump to that point to have somebody help you out with that much stuff.
So a lot of people know CEO, COO, and also a lot of people see him as a visionary and integrator, right? So I'm a visionary, right? Like I can see the 30,000 foot view, right? I can sit up here and see where we're going. I can say, hey, here's where we can be in 5 years, here where we can be in 10 years. Right. Or I can see things coming and say, hey, we need to, plan for this, or we need to pivot here or do that. It's hard for everybody else to see that. Right. But when I get into the day to day, right, the daily operations, that's where I can't communicate that vision, or it slows the vision down. So I needed to get to a point where I can stay up here at this 30,000 foot view and work on my business and see things before they come, or see where things are going wrong and I need to correct them and where we need to pivot. But I need somebody that's in the day-to-day operations, holding people accountable, making sure that the culture is where it needs to be, and making sure that we're all moving forward towards the same common purpose, right? So the integration of it. So COO stands for Chief Operations Officer. And that's exactly what she is. Or an integrator. She's taking my vision and integrating it into the companies.
So you had to get to that point, right? And what I hear a lot of people do is they use the term visionary to write off as an excuse for being lazy or not detail oriented, right? I'm sure you've heard that too, right? Where people are like, oh, I'm a visionary. That means I don't like to work. But you obviously didn't do that because you've been able to build salespeople underneath you, closers, right? A sales manager until you've gotten to that COO. So how did you kind of go against the grain? You're obviously maybe not the most detailed, the most in the day-to-day. How'd you overcome that to build what you've built now?
I had to get in and do the work. And what I mean by that is not just the sales and, you know, the acquisitions and the dispositions and the transaction coordination. That's the subject matter work. I'm talking about, I literally had to get in and I had to write out systems. I had to write out processes. I had to create tools. Almost like that. Yeah. You've read the E-Myth, right?
Yep.
Right. It's that franchise prototype, right? A lot of people that I see that want to be successful entrepreneurs and have a team and grow a team don't take the time to actually write out the systems, tools, and processes. Right.
100%.
And but they just want to hire a bunch of people and just, you know, throw up all their stuff on them and dump it on them, but not telling them how to do it. Right.
Yeah.
It's so much easier if you take the time at the front end, write out, create, and put the systems, tools, and processes in place that you want to run your business off of. And then when you hire people, you train them on that, right?
Yep.
So it's just taking the time and getting it done, right?
I love that because there are two books that you hear people talk about a lot, and I think they're polar opposites. There's the Who, Not How, right? And then there's the E-Myth. And I hear a lot of people that read Who, Not How, and they go, oh, well, I'm just going to hire a bunch of people to build my business for me, and then I don't have to work. I can go sit on the beach. And I've never seen anyone successful. Not to say that you can't learn anything from Who Not How. I think it's a great book. But what you just said, I love. You built out all of the processes, clear expectations, and you do the 10, 10, and 80, right? Or you come up with the idea, you let them figure out how you're going to get there, and then you come in for the last 10% on the back end to write it off. And I love the principles that you've used to be able to get there because you didn't just say, I'm a visionary. I need to go find somebody to partner with to do all the work for me. You put in the work, right? And that's exactly what you said. I put in the work. And so I love that.
Absolutely. And I have a different little take on the who, not how versus like putting in the work, right? So the who, not how is great when you get to a certain point. Yeah. It's like the point I'm at now, like, I can bring in a higher level executive and that person can make a huge difference, right? And a huge difference, meaning that it could be a higher level marketing person or a higher level salesperson or a higher level operator, right? And they have experience and they had the 80% experience, but they need the 20% subject matter, right? And they're used to operating at that 80% of the experience at a high level. But if I'm like most wholesalers, right? 80% of wholesalers don't make more than $250,000 a year or don't do more than $250,000 a year in revenue.
Yeah.
They can't even afford to hire the who that's going to make that big of a difference. Right. So you got to put the work in until you get to a certain point to where you can afford to hire the who, because the right who's don't come cheap.
100%. And there's no way around it, right? You have to put the work in. There's no shortcuts. A lot of people think that they're going to say that they're a visionary and they're going to I'm going to go find my operator partner, my integrator partner to do everything for me. And then I get to sit back and tell them that one day we're going to make $10 million a year in revenue, right? And that's my only job. And so what I love is I believe you're a true visionary where you actually have built something up and then now you can use your highest and best use. So I think that's incredible. Talk to me about the Pathway to Homeownership Program. And the reason I want to ask about this is because, you know, you've started out wholesaling, flipping, kind of like every investor does. And you see wholesalers and flippers kind of go in a couple of different directions, right? They go invest in big apartment complexes, which I'm sure you're probably doing some of that too. Or they just go off and like to do a mastermind coaching, something like that. But you've gone lateral and it sounds like you've got a servicing business and you're building long-term wealth while helping people have a vision to be able to get into a home. So tell me about that program.
Yeah. So that goes back to, what I said early on about identifying your purpose, cause, and passion, right? And in order to build a big or a good team and something that is driven around one common purpose, you got to have a purpose that everybody can believe in. And I believe that our Pathway to Homeownership program is where we're going to have the biggest impact in the world. And what I mean by that, like what we do, instead of going out and just buying rentals or buying flip properties and flipping them, you know, our number one objective is to find a property that we can turn around and fix up. And we don't do, your HGTV flips, right? So we want to make sure all the major systems are good. So, good solid roof, good solid plumbing and electrical, no foundation issues, clean it out, carpet and paint. We don't do any structural changes. And then we find a family that can't get traditional financing today, but they just need a pathway. They just need a bridge, right? And it could be, we're self-employed, right? It's hard for self-employed individuals to walk into a bank and get a loan, right? Yeah. Unless we're married to somebody with a W-2 or we have a significant business history, right? There's a lot of people out there that have a down payment, can afford the monthly payment, and they can show that through underwriting. And they just want to stop renting and start owning and start creating generational wealth. And we give them an opportunity to do that, but also put them in a position to refinance this out within 12 to 36 months. And that might just be 12 months of a solid on-time payment history through our servicing company. And any retail bank in the world is going to refinance them out with 12 good months of solid servicing history, payment history, and enough loan to value or equity in the property.
What is that roughly? So what do they need to put down roughly? And then so 12 months of history, what else are they looking for?
Yeah. So for us, there's certain criteria that we require in our program, and it's to protect us and our investors. So we require a minimum of 12% down, right? Okay. So if the sales price on the property is $100,000, they got to have at least $12,000 down, right? Okay. And that doesn't include closing costs and escrows and all that stuff. That's just a down payment. And then for us, we can't go to the bank and say, hey, I'm gonna buy a bunch of these properties. Can you loan on them to me so I can turn around and sell them on owner financing? We raise our money through private money or private capital, right? So we partner with other people to do this. So in 3 years ago, our average, we were raising money and borrowing money at 8%. So I got to have at least a 2% spread in my loan. Yep. So I was lending at 10%, but now, with interest rates going up, I'm averaging borrowing at 9%. So now I'm lending at 11 to 12%, depending on where my loan is. So people will much rather pay 12% or 11% to get into a home and start owning, right? Than to continue to pay for rent for another year. Because guess what interest that is at?
Yeah.
100%.
Exactly. And right? Tell me about this. I mean, what do your repair requests look like now compared to what they were when you were owning a bunch of rentals, right? What's the difference and the pride of ownership? You owning these properties, or you really just owning the paper to them and them owning the property, right? How is that different?
Well, I don't have any repair requests. And here's what I always tell people. When you get into the owner financing game and selling, properties on a note, you don't have to worry about tenants, toilets, or taxes, right? Yeah. Because now they own the property, the toilets and taxes is their responsibility. So repairs and maintenance, all I do is collect a check every month, or in our case, a deposit into my account, right? So if your personal home, if it's financed by a bank and your air condition goes out, you don't call your bank asking them to come fix your air condition.
Yep.
You're responsible for that yourself. And that's the best thing is, like, if you look at my rental portfolio, I average a little over $200 of cash flow per property. But with my note portfolio, I'm averaging about $682 per property cash flow.
Yeah, you don't have that roof that needs to get replaced with a $10,000 deductible. You don't need that HVAC. There's no squatters or anything like that. You're all covered. Yeah. Now,
I was gonna say the other cool thing about that is I get the full down payment. So our average assignment fee is about $15,000, but our average down payment is about $25,000.
Wow. So you're actually cash flowing more on those properties than you are on your assignments.
Yeah. And don't forget the equity I have in the property in the note too.
Wow.
So when they refinance me out, I have at least $35,000 to $40,000 of equity in that property on average.
And I noticed so right now you're headed south, right? Is the goal to do this nationwide? What's the overall goal with this specific leg of your business?
Yeah, the overall goal is to impact as many people as we can, right? So when I set out and created this mission, as Purpose, Cause, and Passion back in 2020, I had a 10-year vision of providing the dream of homeownership to 500 families through non-traditional financing by 12/31/2030, right? So 2030.
Yep.
Now, my leadership team took it amongst themselves, because we're completely bought into this and everything is aligned. That goal is 500 families by 12/31/2026. And when we hit that finish line, guess what? The finish line is just going to move to 5,000, right? So we're starting by doing the state of South Carolina, which we're in the upstate of South Carolina in the Midlands, and then we're starting to branch out into some of the surrounding areas. So you got Charlotte, North Carolina area. We have Chattanooga, Tennessee. We're doing a little bit in Central Florida, but it's to go from South Carolina to the Southeast, and then as many markets as we can, and it makes sense in the entire country.
Right. And obviously it doesn't make sense maybe in every single market.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
But a lot of them it will. So I want to shift gears a little bit. I always like to talk the last 10 minutes of what you do on a day to day. But I want to read, I sent you an email earlier, and I want to read your email response because I think it's pretty cool. So due to high workload, I will only be responding to emails at 11 and 4 p.m. Eastern on weekdays. Actually, I'll be honest. My assistant will be the one responding to my emails with a tongue out winky face. We will try to respond to your emails in a timely manner without neglecting the needs of our customers, clients, and brand identity. If you need anything, time sensitive, respond to this person. Phones are more fun. And this is my favorite part. Hopefully this new approach to email management will result in more focused and creative work on my part, where I belong. Cheers, and here's to a life outside of my inbox. Time to make an impact. Addicted to real estate, Vaughn Bethell. So I love that you really do practice what you preach about, hey, you're checking your emails at this time. And I can tell you're somebody that's disciplined with your time, right?
Yeah.
So what does your day look like now managing, a CEO? I'm sure your sales managers report to them. So what are you spending your time doing?
Yeah. And before I get into that, I'll be a little bit honest with that email. My assistant, I have an executive personal assistant now, and she's checking that email inbox. So I'm not even checking it. I have a personal email that she sends things that are imperative that only I can answer to my personal inbox. She does respond to a lot of things from my inbox that if you email me at my business email address, more than likely she's getting in and responding to it. Right. It allows me to focus on what I do best. But now, like I mentioned before, it's all about focusing and working on the business. Right. So what are the biggest things that are going to move the needle forward? Well, right now for 2024, for me, that's capital raising, right? We're getting ready to launch a fund. We really want to take this Pathway to Homeownership or PTHO program to the next level. And then we want to basically make the biggest impact. That 500 number is not just a, pie in the sky number. That's realistic, right? And we have less than 3 years to do it now. So in order to do that, I have to raise as much capital as I can, but it's not going out and just raising capital from like normal investors that want a high return on investment, right? Or a high interest rate. Right. Yeah. These are people that I'm also going to be helping by giving them consistent monthly cash flow and security. So think of it as like, and here's the term I'm running with. It's like a real estate annuity. Right. So people that just need monthly cash flow to live off of, and they, or not even just live off of, but just, to have, and they want security. They can't get that in the stock market. The stock market goes up and down. Right. And we've seen in the last couple of years what it's done. Yeah. It's not secure. Right. If the world, something major happened in the world, that stock market could crash and they can lose everything. Yep. Right. Now, the chances of that happening are slim, but the chance of you losing 50, 100, a couple $100,000 in the stock market is very high, depending on how long you're holding it or when you need to cash out of it. Right. Yep. So with us and partnering with us as a private money partner, you're getting consistent monthly cash flow and your investment is not going down. Right. And you getting the full return on your investment or full money out of your investment, entire principal, if you cash out.
I love it, man. So helping people, I like it. What I love about this is you're helping people on both sides, right? You're getting
absolutely
a secure investment for your lenders, right? But you're also helping people get into houses that normally wouldn't. Yeah. Right. So it's not just, you're paying more than if these people went and invested in like mortgage bonds, for example, which is essentially the same thing. They're going to go invest in like Fannie, Freddie mortgage bonds, right? Mm-hmm. And then only give homes to people that have a W-2 with, 2 years of history, of work history, and a 680 credit score, right? Or above. You're helping people that normally wouldn't have those opportunities. Sure. Are we paying? Is it a little bit more expensive? The investors are making a little bit more money, of course, but it's a win-win for both people. So I really love the building there, man. It's awesome.
I appreciate that.
Last couple of questions. So do you have one quote or phrase that you are currently trying to live by? Like right now, the last one that hit you that you go, okay, I'm sticking with this.
Well, I'll tell you, towards the end of 2023, man, like I had one thing, and this is a coach of mine, a mentor of mine told me this probably about 10 years ago, if not longer. But he said, when you get better, everything gets better. Right. And really what he meant by that, like for me at the time in 2023, it was more so my health. Right. I put all my effort and energy into building businesses the last 10 to 15 years and then taking care of everybody else, that I let my health go down. And I mean, like, I don't have any major health issues, but my weight was up and I was tired. I wasn't sleeping good and things like that. Well, sitting here today, as opposed to where I was 90 days ago, I'm 30 pounds lighter. I got a lot more energy, but guess what? My home life is better. I'm much more productive in the office. The office is better. I mean, the experience is better. My team is more jolly. I mean, it's just everything gets better when you put yourself first. And what I mean by that is like, you don't push anybody aside. And so people are like, oh, put yourself first. Well, what about your wife or your spouse or your kids or whatever? Because that's just how we're trained and raised to, take care of them first. But it's like the old oxygen mask on the airplane thing, right? They always tell you, if it drops, put your mask on first and then help everybody else. Because the thing is if something happens to you, who's going to take care of them?
So true. Do you think that you could have gone back and, because you can't do it all, right? It's impossible to have 100% on your health and 100% on your family and 100% on your business. Yep. There's some give and take, right? But knowing what you know now, I mean, could you have built what you built as fast as you did if you did focus on your health? Or would you go back and tell yourself, hey, put health first? Or would you say, hey, do exactly what you did because it worked?
I would say, I can't say I would build it faster than I have. I would say that if I would have had a lot less stress and a lot more fun doing it, if I would have put myself first, right? Yeah. And I mean that because my personal life and everything outside of work and stress levels would have been a lot less, and personal life would have been a lot better, right? Yeah. And that's the reason I got out of the fitness industry is like, I was in the fitness industry for 15 years. I know what to do, when to do it, and how to do it, but I was turned off from it. It was like, and I was focused on other things and focused on business, and I didn't have an accountability person. And 90 days ago, I finally bit the bullet and just hired me a coach, a health coach. Nice. And I always put this, the head trash of, I already know what to do, when to do, and how to do it, right? I don't need a coach. And then I finally got to the point where I have a coach in every other area of my life. Yeah. And it's just, when I hired him, I was like, dude, I already know everything you're going to tell me. I just need you to hold me accountable.
I love it. Right? I love it. And last question, where can people, if people want to invest, right? They want to invest with you. They want to learn more about what you're doing. How can people get in touch with you? How can people follow you?
Yeah, the place where I'm the most active is on Facebook. So just go to Vaughn Bethell on Facebook. It's spelled just like it is there on the screen, VAUGHN. Bethell. I'm also active on LinkedIn, and those are probably the two places I'm the most active. LinkedIn more so for, business and, investing, private lenders on that standpoint. And this Facebook is a combination of both what we're doing and the impact that we're making in the communities. And also, got to let people know what we're doing so they can get involved.
I love it, man. Awesome. Well, this has been a ton of fun. Thank you so much for coming on. I learned a lot. I know everybody's going to get a lot out of this. Guys, this is Vaughn Bethell. Go follow him. Go show him some love on Facebook and Instagram. And this is the Zero to End podcast. We're signing off.